Welcome, everyone. If you are just joining the webinar tonight, we are just waiting for a few people to come in. But while we are waiting for people to join us tonight, I wanted to share a little bit about what you guys have signed up for. So tonight's webinar is about getting ready for the legislative season. This is a really special treat that we've got for you guys because there are multiple organizations who've spent the last few months working really hard on this. And I'm really excited to share this with you guys. We have been working on a way to educate you guys, really get everyone on the same page with information. So tonight we're going to be talking a bit about, vaccine mandates, the history of that in California. We're also going to be talking about how to make an impact with your school boards, what the legislative process looks like, how to speak to your representatives. And there's going to be a lot of information tonight, but we've made it so that they're all mini crash courses and you're going to get some coverage in all of the most important areas that we think you guys need to know to get ready for the legislative season. So the first presentation that we are actually going to start with tonight is going to be on the history of vaccine mandates in California. And this is a really perfect spot for us to begin the presentation with because we've had a lot happen in the state of California, but there's a lot of new people who are just joining this movement who have no idea that this has been happening for a really long time. And so tonight we have Valerie Noble from California Health Coalition Advocacy, and she's going to be sharing about the history of vaccine mandates in California.
Hi. So excited to be here tonight and share with all of you a little bit about California Health Coalition Advocacy. CHCA is a nonprofit organization which initiates and influences laws and policies to expand, protect, and promote the health and well-being of Californians. This includes the right to access, consent to, and refuse products, services, treatments, information, education, exposures, and environments. So as Allison was saying, as we prepare for this legislative session and the bad bills that are being introduced, it's important to know the history of vaccine mandates and exemptions in California. That history begins in 1961. California was one of the first states to include a broad non-medical personal belief exemption to the newly required polio vaccine. Parents who objected to vaccinating their children with the polio vaccine could sign a letter or affidavit stating that the immunization was contrary to his or her beliefs. But through the years, we saw that many new immunization requirements were added. I won't go through them all, but as you can see, we went from one vaccine to 10 diseases that kids needed to be vaccinated against. And I want to draw your attention to AB 499, which was passed in 2011, which allowed minor children 12 years old and older to consent to all sexually transmitted disease vaccines without parental knowledge or consent. And for 5 decades, children were allowed to submit an exemption to any of the required vaccines until 2012, when the California legislature began chipping away at it. In 2012, we saw AB 2109 get passed. This required that parents consult with a licensed healthcare provider in order to receive the personal beliefs exemption. The provider would sign a form attesting that he or she informed the parent about the risks and benefits of vaccination and the risks of vaccine preventable diseases. Governor Jerry Brown signed the bill into law in September of 2012, but he made this note: I will direct the California Health Department to allow for a separate religious exemption on the form. In this way, people whose religious beliefs preclude vaccinations will not be required to seek a healthcare practitioner's signature. However, through the rulemaking process, the religious beliefs exemption was narrowed to apply to only those whose religion prohibited the seeking of medical advice or treatment from healthcare practitioners. And so I want to emphasize that as far as California law and statute goes, a religious exemption was never actually written into statute or law. Then in 2015, the famous SB 277 was passed. This removed all non-medical exemptions, including the religious belief exemption, which fell under the personal beliefs exemption. It grandfathered in existing personal belief exemptions until the next checkpoint. It established a broad medical exemption based on physician discretion, medical circumstances, and family medical history. It exempted pupils in a home-based private school and students enrolled in an independent study program and who do not receive classroom-based instruction. Students on an IEP or individualized education program, while not exempt, are still to receive their education services and supports as outlined in their IEP, regardless of their vaccination status. And finally, it permitted the Department of Health to add additional vaccine requirements for school and daycare enrollment, but only if a personal belief exemption was made available. Also in 2015, SB 792 passed, and this mandated vaccines for daycare workers and volunteers without allowing for personal or religious beliefs exemptions. Then in 2019, SB 276 and SB 714 were passed. There's a lot to these bills, but I'm just going to highlight some of the things that they provided for. Beginning in January 1st, 2021, medical exemptions must be based on strict CDC, ACIP, or AAP criteria. New medical exemptions must be submitted to a state database and are subject to review by the health department. Further, a clinically trained immunization department staff member may review all medical exemptions from any of the following: schools with an overall immunization rate of less than 95%, physicians and surgeons who have submitted 5 or more medical exemptions in a year, schools that do not provide reports of vaccination rates to the department. And there's also a clause that basically says any exemption can be reviewed as necessary to protect public health. But it did grandfather in existing medical exemptions until the next checkpoint. So back in November, a Voice for Choice Advocacy and CHCA came up with a list of 5 potential bad bills based on intel we were getting from our work at the Capitol. We have seen 2 of these bills already introduced. SB 866, introduced by Senator Wiener, is minors vaccine consent, and it provides that a minor 12 years of age or older may consent to a vaccine that is approved by the FDA and is recommended by the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices without the consent of the parent or guardian of the minor. And then Senator Pan has introduced SB 871, which would mandate the COVID-19 vaccine for K through 12 and actually potentially even for younger ages for daycare. We're still expecting an HPV meningitis vaccine mandate for high school students be introduced. And there may also be a bill for vaccine mandates for private and public employees and proof of vaccination for patrons to enter certain establishments, as well as protections for employers who require vaccination of employees. So please follow us, California Health Coalition Advocacy, follow all of our social media, and go to our website, californiahealthcoalitionadvocacy.org, and sign up to receive our emails. Thanks.
Thanks, Valerie. So guys, as you guys can see, I mean, we've had a long history of vaccine mandates in California, but it didn't just happen in one year. It didn't just happen in one bill. There were multiple things that had to happen for us to get to the point that we're at today. And you could see kind of and this is a very crash course. So of course, if you look into every single bill, you can see the erosion of our rights through how they were able to pass things, the amendments that were added into some of this, some of the bills, but you're also able to see how all of it has gotten us to the point that we are at today. And now we're facing even stricter mandates. We wanted to have a crash course on vaccine mandates and the history of it in California, because I think it's really important for people to understand that this isn't something that, this movement or these groups of individuals just came to realize. It was the pandemic that caused them to be against the lockdowns, the mask mandates, all of the public health regulations. It was a long series of events that have happened for a very long time. So calls to action from CHC are that you want to be able to know the history. Over the years, immunization requirements have expanded from 1 disease to 10. At the same time, the personal beliefs exemption was eliminated and the medical exemption was narrowed. So SB 276 completely narrowed down the qualifications for that. What I have really appreciated about California Health Coalition Advocacy is that they have been fighting these mandates for a really long time. So they were the perfect organization to kind of give us a quick crash course on what has been happening in our state. And they were also the perfect organization to give us advice on how to learn from the past and our past mistakes and avoid making them for right now. This year is a really important year for this movement, and by following legislative experts, people that have been in the Capitol, have been putting their own money and have been putting their organizations' resources towards fighting these mandates, it's really important for us to be paying attention to what they're doing and taking their advice on these things. So another call to action with them is to be able to connect with other Convention on Health Rights organizations. So we are a coalition of over 15 organizations. We've been working together for many months. I think actually over a year. Some of them have already been working together for a really long time, and many years prior to that. And so they have been really good at strategizing together, unifying what their messaging is, unifying on what their strategy for either presenting bills or figuring out what legislation could help protect our community. They've been really good at being able to advise other organizations within the movement how to move forward with fighting medical mandates. So the next thing that we are going to discuss is understanding the legislative process. And this is going to be a great presentation. It is going to be by Christina Hildebrand of Voice for Choice Advocacy. She has literally been slaving away advocating for all of our rights for a very long time, but she's also been hosting multiple workshops like every day, every week. And I have no idea how you do that. But it's been so incredible to work with you on this, and I'm excited to see what you've planned for us and learn more about the legislative process. I know a lot of us are excited to learn about this as well. Go ahead,
Thank you,
Christina.
Allison.
Yeah.
So I'm the founder, for those of you who don't know me, I'm the founder and president of A Voice for Choice Advocacy. We educate and advocate for informed choice and transparency of what goes into your body. Over the past 7 years, A Voice for Choice Advocacy has established itself as the leading legislative organization lobbying in the California Capitol for your health rights. We've taken a position on vaccine legislation that Valerie talked about since 2015, including SB 277, SB 276, and SB 714. We were able to defeat SB 18, which was the Children's Bill of Rights, and got significant amendments to AB 992, which allowed parents to opt out of vaccines during home visits without discrimination. We've also worked in the Assembly with Assemblymember Cristina Garcia to author and get AB 1989, the Menstrual Products Right to Know Act, enacted into law in 2020. And we currently have 2 lobbyists, myself, and we just hired, excitingly, a new legislative director, all of whom are actively lobbying the legislature in the Sacramento Capitol. And we will be this year and from now on. Who are your state legislators? Who is it that are making these bills? So in Sacramento, there are 120 legislators, 40 of them are senators, 80 of them are assembly members, and they sit on various committees. Of those 120, we do have a supermajority in both houses of Democrats. So we have about 2/3 senators are Democrats and 2/3 assembly members are Democrats. It means that in order for anything to get passed in Sacramento, you have to have the majority of the Democrats on board. That is very different from other states. It's why our legislation is very different. The other piece is that these legislatures sit on many different committees. There are committees that are issue-based. So for example, health committees, education, business and professions, those types of things. In each committee, the chair is a Democrat and the vice chair is a Republican. The rest of the committee can range from 5 people to the Assembly Health Committee is 13 people, and they are split up relative to the number of party in each party. So right now, 2/3 of each of these committees are made up of Democrats and 2/3 are made up of Republicans. The other thing I should say is there are the Senate districts. So there are 40 Senate districts and each senator oversees 1 million people. Each assembly member oversees 500,000 people. So those are their constituents. They are huge compared to most states of who is voting for them and voting them in. And the next slide, I'm going to go through the timeline of California bills. So I'm going to take you through from the beginning to the end of a bill, the life cycle of a bill. Bills are introduced by legislators. Each legislature has somewhere between 30 and 40 bills that they introduce every year. That means our legislature in total has about 3,000 pieces of legislation that go through every year. That is a huge amount of legislation. Our legislatures are full-time legislatures. Most states are not like that. You have other states like Texas, for example, has legislation. The legislature is in session for 3 months every other year. Here in California, we are in session 9 months every single year. So your legislatures are really working legislatures. They don't have another job outside of that. Our legislative season starts in January, but they can introduce bills in December if they want. Not many were introduced this year in December, and they can be introduced up until this year. It's February 18th, but usually it's sometime mid-February. A bill is introduced by a legislature. When it is introduced, it gets a bill number. So it has either SB for Senate bill or AB for Assembly bill. Senate bills are introduced by senators, Assembly bills are introduced by Assembly members, and then it has a number after that. The number is inconsequential. They just go in order as to when the Legislative Council assign the numbers. There are some years that get special numbers, like SB1 is usually always taken into consideration, and a special bill usually set aside for that, but most of them are just assigned numbers sort of sequentially. The other key thing is our legislature runs in 2-year sessions. That means that when legislators are elected, they come in and they have from that year, there's 2 years that they have bills, and there are bills that cross over those 2 years. And when I get to the end of this, I'll explain how that works. But most legislation is introduced in January, beginning of February. Once it is introduced, it has to sit for 30 days. There is nothing that can happen to it for 30 days. It doesn't mean to say that that's not what that you don't need to do anything during that time. But for example, the 2 bills that have been introduced, the one by Senator Wiener and the one by Senator Pan, they are sitting at the moment and nothing can happen to them for 30 days. Once the 30 days is up, those bills go to the Rules Committee, and the Rules Committee assigns them to whatever committee is appropriate for those bills. There are bills which are not introduced or which are introduced by middle of February, but they're called spot bills. And those bills don't have any significant information in them. They don't have the words that go behind the bill or the context that goes behind the bill, but they're placeholders. They're basically for legislators that don't have the exact wording or not sure exactly what legislation they want to bring forward that year. They put in a spot bill. So if you see one of those, you'll know it because it has a title and very little in the body of the legislation. Those can change at any time before they go to the first committee. If you do see one of those, and for example, it has a title that relates to transportation, it doesn't mean that the final bill will relate to transportation. They can change it to whatever they want. So come February, March, bills start going to committees. They're assigned usually to at least one committee. In the past few years, we have seen bills be restricted to one committee because of COVID, but prior to that, they would get assigned to as many committees as is appropriate. So for example, SB 277 in 2015 was assigned to the Health Committee, the Education Committee, and the Judiciary Committee on the Senate side. Once it got to the Assembly, it was only assigned to the Health Committee. So it really depends on the bill. We're not sure what's going to happen this year. We expect it to be closer to what it used to be and that bills will be assigned to multiple committees, but we're really not sure how the legislature is going to work this year. At every stage, when it goes to a committee, those legislators that are part of that committee vote on the bill. And it happens in the Senate side and the Assembly side. So if a bill is introduced by a senator, it goes through the Senate side of the legislature first. If it's brought forward by an Assembly member, it goes through the Assembly side. Where it's going through, those steps are identical at this stage of the process. They're going to the Rules Committee, they're being assigned to a committee, they're going to be voted on by that committee. If the legislation passes out of the committee, so if it gets more than a 50% vote, so most bills require a 50% vote. If they are an emergency bill, then they would need a 2/3 vote. and they get voted on by the committee. If it's assigned to more than one committee, it goes from that committee. If it passes out of that committee, it then goes to the next committee. Once it has gone through all the committees, and there is a benefit to having a bill assigned to more than one committee, because a committee is a place where, and I'll get into what this means, but it is a place where amendments can be made, and it's a place where the bill can fail, where the bill cannot be passed. And so it stops the bill in its tracks. Once, I will say, if a bill is introduced in the Senate, it usually makes its way through the Senate without being stopped, or if it gets a hearing, like if it starts progressing through, it usually makes its way all the way through. There are also many fewer amendments made in the first house of the bill, and that is because senators are voting on their colleagues, other senators' bills, and so they want to, be seen favorably. So those senators will vote favorably on their bills and vice versa. Not supposed to happen. You're not supposed to horse trade. You're not supposed to do that. But it does happen because they are colleagues, that they are more favorable to their own house's bills. So we don't see many amendments being made in the first house, and we see bills sort of passing through the first house. Once they make it through the various committees, the last committee that it goes to, if it does have a fiscal impact, and most of our bills do, is the Appropriations Committee. The Appropriations Committee holds all of the bills until it has received, until a certain date in May, until it's received all the bills that are coming to the Appropriations Committee. And they then, at the end of the session in that house, the Appropriations Chair and the Appropriations Committee will pass however many bills they believe will fit in the budget out of the Appropriations Committee. It is a place in the first house where most of the bills pass out because the budget isn't firm, and it isn't clear how much budget can be attributed to each of these bills. Once it comes out of the Appropriations Committee, or if it didn't go through the Appropriations Committee, it heads to the floor of that house, so the Senate floor or the Assembly floor. On the Assembly floor and on the Senate floor, it gets voted by all members. In order to pass a bill through the floor, you have to have a 50% majority, unless it's an emergency bill. As I said, that would need a 2/3 majority. If a legislature does not vote on a bill, that counts as a no vote. They have to have 41 votes in the Assembly and 21 votes in the Senate in order for it to pass off the floor. The key piece there is, for example, we are missing 5 legislatures at the moment, or 5 seats that don't have legislators sitting in them in the Assembly. Those 5 votes are considered no votes or abstention votes. And so you still need 41 votes in the Assembly in order to get a bill passed. That doesn't change if there are empty seats. Once a bill is passed on the Senate floor or the Assembly floor, it then moves on to the other house. It sort of switches positions and it goes across. And that usually happens, or that does happen, in June. It then starts the whole process over again, just on the other side. So an Assembly bill goes to the Senate, a Senate bill goes to the Assembly, and it passes through the same process as it did before. The legislators have a break. So from the month of July, usually this year it's from the 1st of July to the 31st of July, they have a month off where they are not in session. It gives us a room to breathe, but also a lot of work to do, because by that point we know really what the bills are looking like, what we need to do in order to either oppose them, support them, or amend them. One key thing that can happen at any stage of this process is something called gut and amending. If a bill is gut and amended, it means the entire contents of that bill is removed and replaced with something else. We saw this happen with SB 714, so SB 276 in 2019, which made the medical exemptions more strict, went through this whole process, but the governor at the end said, I want these amendments made, and it couldn't be amended in SB 276 because SB 276 had already made it all the way through to the Assembly floor. And so they took SB 714, which was a transportation bill, and they completely gutted it and amended it and put in the additional language that the governor wanted. That can happen at any time. So you see bills being gutted and amended. They are supposed to go through the whole committee process, but they really don't. They get all of that gets waived. So at any of these stages, this is how the process is supposed to go, but at any of these stages, the legislature can waive the requirements. And we saw that with the Gut and Amend. It didn't go through any of the SB 714, it didn't go through any of the committees, it didn't go through any of the process. It didn't have the wait period that it was required to have. It got sent immediately from the Senate floor to the Assembly floor. I mean, it all happened within a few days, which shouldn't happen, removes our democratic process, but it does happen. So once the bill passes off the Assembly floor in August, usually, it then goes to the governor. And the governor, it has to get to the governor's desk. There's a certain date in September, beginning of September, where it has to get to the governor's desk by. And the governor has three options. The governor can sign the bill, in which case it becomes law. Most bills become law the following January. If it's an emergency bill, it can go into effect immediately. If the governor vetoes the bill, so says, I'm not going to sign this, it can go back to the legislature. And if the legislature wants it badly enough and they have a 2/3 vote, they can override that veto. That doesn't happen very often because they want to be in the governor's good graces. They want the rest of their bills to be signed off. And so it doesn't happen very often. It's also really hard to get a 2/3 majority vote. So most of the time, these bills have been passed with a 50% majority, and that extra stretch is hard to get. And then the other thing the governor can do is do nothing. If the governor does nothing, it doesn't mean to say it's dead. It means it is alive and it's as if he signed it. So you do want him, he has to veto it in order for it not to go ahead. The other thing that there is there are 2-year bills. So we just saw this in January. If a bill was was introduced in the first year of our 2-year session, so for example, this 2-year session was 2021, 2022. It's always an odd year and an even year. If it was introduced in 2021 and it didn't make it through the full legislative process, the bill author can bring it back up in the month of January, and it has to pass through the first house by the end of January, by the 31st of January. If it passes through there, it then has to go through the second house, and then can go to the governor. So that is the process. The status of your issue, really want to know where you're at. So you want to know the history. For example, Valerie just went through that. What bills have been passed, vetoed in the future, in the past. And then what is it looking like this year? So what current bills do we have? Valerie also went through that. This website, leginfo.legislature.ca.gov, has the full list of all the bills historically and to date. You can search by bill number, you can search by keyword, and you can get all of the information that you want there. One of the key things that I would recommend reading is when you're looking at bills is a bill analysis. So before every committee hearing, there is a bill analysis, and it goes through the full information on that bill, who's supporting it, who's opposing it, the opinions on that bill. You want to know what organizations are active on the bill, who's supporting it, who's opposing it, who's wanting to amend it. The key piece there is we very often look to who is supporting or opposing a bill, taking the same position as we are. And there are some bills that we actually don't put our names on, or we don't spend a lot of time on, because we know there is a much more powerful lobby that is taking the same position as us. So for example, on AB 1400, which was the single payer healthcare bill in January this year, we knew that the CMA, the California Medical Association, and the California Hospital Association was opposing it. We at Voice for Choice Advocacy did not spend our time and effort on it because we knew that very likely that those organizations were going to kill and make sure that that bill didn't go any further. And then the last piece of this is knowing where your two legislators, your assembly member and your senator, stand on the bill, and knowing what their perspective is on this issue, on the issue that you're looking at. We, Voice for Choice Advocacy and CHCA, we are the two organizations that have 501c4s, which allows us to lobby heavily in the Capitol. We have, over the past years, proposed good bills. We do that to get and to talking to legislators and having conversations with legislators, but also to, you go back one one step on the video. But also to ensure that our bills get brought forward and that we have positive bills and we're not just reacting to the bills that are out there. A Voice for Choice Advocacy and CHCA both have a religious and conscious belief exemption language that we are talking to legislators about. A Voice for Choice Advocacy also has natural immunity and titer testing, expanding medical exemption documentation, and reducing the number of required vaccines to only transmissible diseases. CHCA has bills that are safeguarding civil liberties, higher education belief exemptions, and SCR 59, which is a medical interventions, voluntary and informed consent. The importance of lobbyists. So when we started this in 2015, when I started this in 2015, the first two hearings for SB 277, I went up as a person and thought, yep, we're going to beat this bill. We've got thousands of people in the Capitol. Washington and Oregon had beat their bills. And so we were sure that we were going to make this happen. We had everything, all lines in the row, everything, all our ducks in a row that we were going to beat this. Unfortunately, we got to the education hearing, which was the second hearing, and Senator Pan did not have the votes. And we all sat there on the edge of our seats going, yes, we beat this, we beat this. And the chair of the Education Committee turned to Pan and said, you don't have the votes. And if you want to, we can postpone the hearing and the votes until next week. He turned to his lobbyist and turned back and said, yes, I'd like to do that. All of us, thousands of people, got up, left, went home, and we worked our hardest to get those legislators not to change their mind, but they did. They also did some things of moving legislators around on the committee and that type of thing in that week. He came back and he had the votes and the bill moved forward. What I realized at that time is that we really had no idea what we were doing in that Capitol. We thought that our power of the voice, which it should be, was what was going to win the day. And unfortunately, that is not the case in our Capitol. It is not the power of the people and the voice of the people that really overrides anything else. It is lobbyists. I spoke with people in Illinois. I spoke with people in Washington. I spoke with NVIC, the National Vaccine Information Center, and I said, what do we need to do? Because this is not going our way. And all three of those organizations, those people that I spoke to and everyone else just said, you need a lobbyist. They know what's going on in that building. They know how to run the show. And so we went to look to hire a lobbyist. It was incredibly hard to hire a lobbyist because most of the lobbyists either had pharma ties already, wanted to work for the CMA, or wanted to work for them in the future. And so it was very, very hard to hire a lobbyist. We did find a lobbyist as the bill was going into the assembly. It was really too little too late at that point. We were up against, the CMA had about $2 million they spent against us with 8 lobbyists. But it made me realize that if a bill came back in the future, that we needed to have more lobbyists in the building. In 2019, CHCA had a lobbyist, we had 3 lobbyists, and there were 2 other lobbyists working the bill. With those 5, we actually were more successful. We had 30 Democrats hold off of that bill, and Senator Pan only passed the bill with 1 vote. So it had 42 votes as it went through the assembly. So we do see the significance of having a lobbyist. The other advantages of having a lobbyist, it means that we can get meetings with staffers and legislators much more easily because they're known in the Capitol. We have intel. So for example, CHCA, as Valerie mentioned, CHCA and a Voice for Choice Advocacy early on, about 3 months ago, knew that these bills were going to be brought forward and alerted us. And the other thing is that we can make amendments. We can request amendments on a bill much more easily if we have lobbyists. So position on bills and having amendments versus killing a bill. So in 2015, we very much as a movement were adamant that we had to kill SB 277, that we had to get rid of the bill completely, that we were not going to have any amendments. We didn't even really understand what amendments were or how they worked. What we realized over the years is that it is much easier in many cases to get amendments on a bill. Amendments are changes in the language of the bill. So making changes to what the bill says, what the purpose of the bill is, the nitty gritty of what it is. We have been, a Voice for Choice Advocacy has been quite successful in submitting amendments and getting amendments made to bills. And what it does is it may not change the effect of the bill in total, but it does either water down the bill or for certain pieces, like for example, for a home visit bill that was going through, we asked for there to be an exemption and that people not be discriminated on if they were to use that exemption. That was a big win for us. The bill was going to move forward anyway. In order to kill a bill, you have to have the necessary votes on your side. So you have to have 40 plus votes or 20 plus votes in the Assembly and the Senate. Getting amendments, as I said, is more strategic. You need a coordinated effort between organizations on proposing amendments. So it is much better or much easier to get amendments if a lot of people are asking for those amendments. It also is asking your legislators, and you'll hear later how you can help with that and how you can talk to your legislators. And then focusing on, as I said, getting constituents to ask those. When to oppose a bad bill. So when is it that you should completely oppose a bill and not request any amendments? It is good to do that if it's clear that there are not enough votes. So if you know that there is no way that a bill is going to pass, then absolutely go and oppose it all the way. You'd want to do it early in the process. So at the beginning, if we can say, yep, we oppose the bill, but as the bill goes through, especially when it moves to the other house, it is really important if you see it taking off that you ask for the amendments there. And then if there is public opinion and opposition, especially if there are large lobbies like the CMA or the California Teachers Association, that kind of thing. The other key thing is you can submit a letter of support or opposition or request amendments on the committee page. So for example, if it's in the Senate Health Committee, if you go to the Senate Health Committee page, you can just search for that, Senate Health Committee, California. There is a little button that you can press to send in a letter of opposition or support or asking amendments. So what is most impactful? And I get asked this a lot. I get asked, okay, or people say to me, I'm going to write emails. I'm going to write tons of emails, or, I'm going to go to rallies, or, what is it that has the most impact on a bill? So I've split them into 3 groups. The groups the things within these groups are pretty similar in how much impact they have, but the most impact is special interests, party pressure, lobbyists, and media. So if there is a lot of pressure going for a bill or opposing a bill from special interests such as teachers unions or the medical association, those types of things, if the party is against the bill, so if it's a Democrat legislature that has Democrats and the party is against it, lobbyists, as we talked about, and the media plays a big role here. So if the LA Times or the Sacramento Bee or the San Francisco Chronicle comes out in support or opposition of a bill, or is critical of a bill, or is, favoring a bill, that does have an impact on legislators' opinion, because they want to have constituents be on board. So if constituents are reading how bad something is or how good something is, they're expecting their legislators to do the same. The second group here is where you come in. Massive public opinion. So if there is a huge swell, and I'm not talking our numbers, I'm talking hundreds of thousands. Remember, California has 40 million people. So in order to make a difference, you have to have millions of people making a statement. Meetings with legislators or staffers, so individual constituent meetings, remember they are really important, they work for you, and then showing up at hearings. So when there are hearings, many of the hearings this year were on, or all of them were on Zoom. Not many people showed up at the Capitol. I'll get into that, it is pretty desolate there, but you can call into hearings. And then the last thing is making phone calls, writing letters, emails, and signing petitions to your legislators. Those really don't have that much of an impact. It is more a checkbox and you get tallied in the office, but it really doesn't have that much of an impact compared to the other things. If you're visiting Sacramento, and I would not recommend visiting Sacramento at this point, you are much better off talking to your legislators and their staffers in the district. If you come to Sacramento, we have the wonderful Capitol building, but none of the legislators are actually in the Capitol building. There is a swing space because the back of the Capitol building is being knocked down and being rebuilt. So there is a swing space on O Street between 10th and 11th, where all of the legislators and their staff have offices, but the offices aren't open. I was there a week and a half ago and it was dead. There was nobody. All the office doors are closed. Most of them are locked. Even if they are there behind closed doors, they've locked them because they don't want people coming and visiting them. There are no plans that we have for capital lobbying other than our lobbyists. We may plan for a lobby day in the future if this all changes. But for now, most of the legislative meetings that happen are happening on Zoom. How you can get in touch with us. So our website is A Voice for Choice Advocacy, and our handles on every other platform are at A Voice for Choice. So we're on Facebook, Instagram, Telegram, Parler, YouTube, BitChute, Odyssey. If you want to be on our newsletter, you go to the website A Voice for Choice Advocacy, and just a pop-up shows up and you can fill that in and we will add you to our newsletter.
Thank you, Christina.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, calls to action from A Voice for Choice Advocacy. You want to research the bills you're interested in and where they are in the process. So she put a website here. This is leginfo.legislature.ca.gov. And then you also want to be meeting with your legislators and staff. I'm going to speak a little bit on that, just to expand on meeting with your legislators and staff. Having a lobbyist in the Capitol and in districts, that is extremely, extremely important. But how you can get involved is by meeting with your legislators yourself. And just like how it's important to have a lobbyist in the Capitol who can kind of inform you of the happenings that are going on and maybe drop some hints as to where a legislator might be at on a certain bill, that's the same thing that we as citizens can do as well. We can create, we can go in and meet with our legislators ourselves and do it consistently and do it so that we are building a relationship with them. We're doing it so that we understand what other bills they're interested in, how we can kind of build a bridge between what their interests are, what they're passionate about, and what we're passionate about. That's an extremely important part to our efforts in this movement of making change in the legislature. Christina also talked about submitting a letter of support or opposition or even amendment request to the committee hearing the bill. So Christina talked about the bill process, right? So it starts in it'll either start in the Senate House or it'll start in the Assembly House. The next step is it gets assigned specific committees. When it's assigned those committees, it'll be a committee like Education or Health, right? Those are generally the two most popular ones that our kind of bills will be heard in. You would want to submit a letter of support or opposition specifically on those topics, on health or education. And you can do that by the support or opposition letter portals on the committee websites. Another important thing is to give public comment at hearings. A lot of times you're able to call in or you can show up in person. Christina said right now we are not able to go in person the way that we used to. So right now they are offering the ability for us to call in. And then also she's asking all of us to talk to one person a day and plant the seeds. Just having those genuine conversations with people in passing or friends and just talking about how these bills are affecting your life is so important because it really provides perspective for people. So I love this presentation because when I first started out in advocacy, and for those of you who don't know me, I forgot to introduce myself at the beginning of this. My name is Allison. I'm the president of Freedom Keepers United, and our organization actually started during 2019 when SB 276 was coming down the pipeline, and I had absolutely no idea what the legislative process was. And it seemed really scary and it seemed really intimidating. But if you look at that chart, and you guys will all get a copy of some of these slides and the information if you registered tonight. But the process is really straightforward. There's one process. It starts in one house, goes through the committees. It's voted on in those committees. If it passes those committees, it goes to the floor of that house. If the floor of that house passes that bill through, then it repeats that exact same process in the second house. If there's concurrence on the bill, people from both houses agree on the amendments, then it goes on to the governor's desk. And that is something that it took me a really long time to like fully understand. And I only understood that when I went through the process. So the bills that we're seeing today, we have SB 871 and 866. Those two bills are currently just recently introduced. And it takes 30 days for there to be any action on those bills. So they have to kind of sit in their house for 30 days until any action can be taken. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. We're waiting for those 30 days to pass, and they will get assigned their committees. When they are assigned those committees, that's when our people, each of us from each organization and every advocate and individual who is against these bills, that's when we need to be submitting letters of opposition and giving public comment and talking to people and spreading awareness about what these bills are about. So A Voice for Choice has been around for a really long time. Like she said, they have been the leading medical freedom organization for the last 7 years at the Capitol. If you want to keep in touch with her, you want to sign up for her newsletter at avoiceforchoiceadvocacy.org, and she is constantly sending updates on bills and action alerts. So the next presentation that we are going to be discussing grassroots advocacy and communicating with legislators. This is going to be presented by PERC, which stands for Protection of the Educational Rights of Kids. And they have been so hard at work recently. I know that you guys have probably seen a lot of their lawsuits, but PERC is a wonderful organization. They actually started at the same time as our organization, and we did a ton of meetings together. So I can speak from firsthand experience doing like dozens of meetings with you guys with PERC, that they have a lot of experience and knowledge and great advice on how to connect with our representatives, how to speak with them, and really communicate effectively what we need them to hear, and even to ask questions on the floor. So I am going to have Darlene.
So hi, everybody. I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. I know that with all of the crash courses, we are giving you a lot of information. I'm going to be sharing some more information with you about how to communicate effectively with your legislators. So take a couple deep breaths. If you need to drink some water, we're going to get into some more information with you. So Protection of the Educational Rights of Kids, PERC, we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, and we strive to educate, empower, and engage citizens to get involved in matters that impact educational outcomes in California. We focus on precise and powerful involvement as the pathway to advocacy. So I just want to share, I know there are a lot of ways that we can get involved. So sometimes it's talking to the people in our families and who surround us. Sometimes it's going to rallies, and lobbying with your legislator is another way that you can advocate. And just like how the way that you talk to your friends is one way and the way that you speak at work is a different way, so is true with advocating with your legislators. So the way that we communicate with them is a little bit different from how we are speaking at rallies. So overall goal and purpose of district meetings with your state legislators is to build positive relationships with legislators and their staff. And this is no matter what party line they're in, it's always important to have a good relationship with them. Communicate your perspective. Everybody has a different story that they can bring to the table. So whether it's that you're a parent, you're a firefighter, you're a business owner, you've lived in the community your whole life, you're active in the school district or in the community. Those are perspectives that they need to hear about and how the bill impacts you specifically. We want to have a goal of either stopping the bills from passing, requesting alternative bills, or asking for concessions, which, as Christina talked about, would be amendments, either taking language out of the bill or adding language to the bill, so that it's a little bit easier to be a part of our life if it does pass.
Sorry, guys. Hold on a second. I don't know what is happening here. Technical difficulties. Hold on a second. That was very weird.
No problem. Thank you so much, Allison, for all of your coordinating with the event today.
Of course, no problem. I don't know what I did accidentally though here. Let me see. There we go. Okay, we're back.
Okay, so meeting prep, step one, getting to know your legislators. This is very important so that you're aware of what information you can present from where they understand things. So learning about your legislator includes reading their website bio, past and current committee work. Are they in the military committee or the aging and long-term care committee? Are they in a caucus? What you want to know information on bills that they've authored and their voting history. This is all part of getting to know the audience that you're speaking to, right? Are they Republican or Democrat? What things do they care about? You want to find something that you can show common interest in. So again, if your legislator served in the military and so did your father, grandparent, or somebody else in your family, you can make that a way to connect. If you notice that they host events, toy drives, can drives, things that are outreach to the community, and that's something that you're also passionate about, you know, that's another way to connect. Or are they getting funding for natural preservation in the community, or you know, those different things that you can find relationships with. Definitely look for those things so that you can make connections other than just it being about your opposition to a bill. You want to set a foundation of relatability before presenting your ask. So building a positive relationship through multiple interactions is very important. Again, so that you're not just going to them saying, you know, I live in your district, I oppose this bill, you need to listen to me. Build that relationship by calling and asking what events they're holding that constituents can attend, and make multiple interactions. You know, thank them for hosting an event where they're collecting goods for people in the community, or thank them for something else that they've done, even if it's not related to this issue. And again, the goal is to build relatability. Make friends with both local and Capitol staff. The staff can often be the gatekeepers. And so sometimes when it comes to bills, it's usually the staff that are reading the bills, reading the summaries, talking to the constituents about why the bill is good or not. And so it's really important to build relationship with them, because oftentimes it ends up that the legislator goes to the staff and say, okay, tell me what our constituents are saying. What are they saying about the bills, or what are they saying about their concerns this year? Introduce yourself and build connections with them, and then find out who staffs the health and education bills, or any committees that are specific to where the bill is going to go to. Find out which staff member is in charge of those bills. And then also it's good to know who's the district director. If you're having a hard time getting a meeting, you might need to talk to the district director about it, or even call the Capitol staff and talk to the chief of staff at the Capitol. So you're going to get to know the different personalities of the staff, and sometimes it's finding that perfect staff member who either has the right information or can connect you to the legislator directly, or can get you what you need from the office. Another great thing to know is signing up to receive their emails. You can easily sign up through their website. However, I've always thought it was a great idea to talk about that with their staff, and just let them know, you know, I'm interested in learning more about the bills and what the legislator is doing. I've signed up for the emails, or can you direct me on how to sign up, just to have that conversation piece. Some notes about staff. It's a staff member's job to be friendly, although some are not. So just because a staff member is kind does not necessarily mean that they're on our side. So be careful to not overshare, because they might be nodding in agreement with what you're sharing with them, and then all of a sudden you're blurting out that you hate the bill author, or you don't like the process, or you think that there's an agenda. Don't overshare, because they might just be presenting themselves as neutral, and then you're displaying something that they're going to go back and be like, oh, that person hates Senator Pan, who's going to listen to him? So just be careful how you present yourself and that you keep that reservation. Some legislators depend solely on their staff, as I've talked about before. So maintaining a relationship with them, even if they're not on our side, is important because they may give useful advice that can help with future correspondences or help our movement. For example, they might tell you how the legislator decides on bills, reasons they think the bill will benefit California. And then with that information, we can create better talking points that specifically address the issues that they're sharing with us. If a staff member is not friendly, please don't be discouraged. Sometimes they're trained at their political colleges or their political schools to keep the opposition out of the legislator's bubble. They don't want to create stress. They don't want to create too much energy around things that might be stressful to the senator or the assembly member. So in this case, just build relationships with the other staff members. Step 2 is getting to schedule that meeting, which is really important. Sometimes they might tell you, the next available appointment will be in 3 months. Is that okay? You can work to get something sooner, but sometimes you just have to take what they have to offer. Sometimes they're going to tell you, we have a lot of people who want to have a meeting over this bill, so we're going to just group you all together. You'll be with strangers and you're going to all have the meeting at the same time. Sometimes they'll tell you, the legislator just doesn't have time, but you can meet with the staff. So this is, again, why building relationship is so important, because the better of a relationship that you build and the more interactions that you make, the more likely it will be that you'll get a meeting at the right time. They may ask if you represent an organization. You can state simply you're a constituent, or you might state that you're a member of one of our organizations or another. And then they might ask you, what is the meeting about? It may be hard to get a meeting saying that the meeting is about vaccine bills. So meetings can also be about, school concerns, parent concerns, about the pandemic. And again, it's depending on how you build that relationship, what you say the meeting will be about. Sometimes a meeting can be as little as 15 minutes. It might get to be 30 minutes, sometimes more if there's more people, or again, if you have a good relationship. Just take note, Zoom meetings does have pros and cons. They don't necessarily get to see your body language, and your emotions might not clearly be communicated via Zoom, but mask won't be an issue. So you have to weigh the balance of making sure that something like wearing a mask doesn't become the center of the meeting, and that you're really focused on the goal of the meeting, which is to talk about the bills and why they're concerning. Step 3, creating a one-pager. So you'll want to take documents to your meetings, whether it be a constituent event where you might get a few sentences or maybe even a conversation, or it might be one of those in-person sit-down meetings. So building a one-pager is very important because they go through a lot of paperwork. They can have thousands of bills across their desk, with lobbyists bringing documents. So they want things that are easy to read because they already get stacks and stacks of papers. So it needs to be easy to read, easy to understand, and they need to know the point right away. So, sometimes when we're wanting to convey how we feel about a bill, we might write our life story, multiple pages of paragraphs, and then the message gets lost in it. And I've done that myself. So something that I've learned along the way is a one-pager is a great way to communicate what your specific ask is, and then whatever talking points you have. So clearly state your specific ask and use bullet points with up to 3 talking points at the top. If your message is buried in paragraphs, again, it will get overlooked. So save your time from writing the long life story and just really stick to the points. You can talk about your life story. Additional content can further explain your points as long as it's kept on one side of one page. You can give them reasons to see that the bill is not right or ready, show negative impacts on children, families, and constituents, provide better solutions to address their public health concerns. For example, alternative bills. You can say, I think something better than a mandate would be ongoing funding for cleaning supplies or a bill to promote healthier lifestyle. If you're going to be citing any resources, they need to be sources that they trust. So CDC, CDPH, probably not going to be an article from Fox News or, that type of outlet. And make sure to include your contact information. One, because they want to confirm that you're a constituent. And two, if they want to follow up with questions, they'll know where to contact you. Also follow up with meetings with a thank you. You can reiterate important points and then elaborate on talking points. So if you had a great meeting, they thought one of your talking points was really important, you can follow up with a thank you and then give them additional information from that talking point. Okay, so some presentation tips that have always helped along the way. I've been through so many meetings and I've seen people make very simple mistakes that it created a stereotype in the meeting. So one would be no political attire. And again, this is an issue where there's things that you can wear, things that you can say at something like a rally or among friends. But just like when you're going to work, when you're going to a meeting or going to one of your legislators' events, it might be more beneficial to not wear political attire. You want to wear clean cut clothing. If you have professional clothing, you can wear that, or if it's just jeans, as long as it's clean cut. Expect to wear a mask or else ask for a Zoom meeting. And not all legislators, adhere to the mask rules. I went to see a Democrat senator and assembly member. Neither of them were wearing a mask, but I had it in my bag just in case. And again, it's a matter of relationship building at that point. Avoid giving them opportunity to prejudge you. And that's the point of what this is about, right? If we want to focus on stopping certain bills or letting them know that we oppose bills, we want to come with the best foot forward and again, be relatable to them. Respect is imperative at winning them over. Being angry or accusatory will not win them over. And so we want them to care about what we're saying. We want them to listen to what we're saying. And it's important to speak their language. For example, Republicans tend to care more about individual rights, while Democrats tend to care more about social responsibility. So you might say vaccine mandates violate individual rights, right? Which they do. But depending on who you're talking to, it might be more effective to say that you feel your social responsibility is to present information and concerns about the negative effects a mandate will have on the community. And then also to keep in mind that sometimes bringing younger children to events, if it's a meeting, can be distracting, but it depends on the event, right? If it's a toy drive or if it's a hike, it might be great to bring your children because then they can see who the bill is going to impact. But if it's a sit-down meeting over Zoom or in the office, I would probably only let children participate if they're older teens or adult children who can intelligibly communicate within the meeting. And then also thinking about perspective. You are a concerned parent first and foremost. So it's really important to present that first, okay? Again, speak to them from where they're at and use their language. So again, if you're talking to a Republican, you might speak one way. If you're talking to a Democrat, you might speak a different way. And again, we are nonpartisan, but we also understand that different parties have different lines of what they care about and how they make decisions on bills. And so speaking to the things that they care about is really important. And impressions are important. So, they already have a perception about so-called anti-vaxxers. And so we don't want to confirm their bias. We actually want to prove it wrong. So I have been in meetings where they said, wow, we thought anti-vaxxers were young, dumb yoga moms who were dangerous and really didn't care about the public. They just wanted to do whatever they wanted to do. You've really proved that message wrong. So, presentation does matter and how you present yourself does matter. Some more tips that I think it's important to share. Evaluate your strengths and weaknesses in communication. So I know that there are some constituents who say, you know, my legislator is a bill author. I'm not going to get anywhere there. And what am I going to say to them? I don't feel comfortable arguing with them. So they've used their time instead to talk to people who did support the bill, thank them for their service, secured their vote in our favor, and ask what they could do to further help our movement. So think about your strengths and weaknesses and where you might best benefit the movement. If you feel it's difficult to communicate with legislators, again, it's okay to simply call their office, state your opposition, and then invest your time volunteering with the allies or donating to organizations that have lobbyists and finding that way that you can best help the overall movement. It's really important to keep in mind that these meetings are not the best platform to show how proud you are to be from an opposing party. Do not use this as your chance to tell them that they're destroying our state, a terrible leader, or part of an agenda, as much as we might think that is. Or even if you've talked to you know, somebody from our side who says, yes, the other side is, you know, following an agenda, we wouldn't want to go to them and say, see, this legislator said you're following an agenda. These meetings are not the right opportunity to try to change their stance on vaccines, but we want to stop the mandates from being imposed, right? So if it's hard enough for people around them to convince them on their position about vaccines, what more in a 15-minute meeting, right? So this is why getting to know them becomes much more important, because we've been able to have people vote on our side, not on the vaccine issue, but on the impact on doctors, or the impact on parents, or on the impact on children, or things like cybersecurity, if that's something that's important to that legislator. So really thinking about how we present our information and what we present it about is important. And then again, this is not an appropriate time for belittling their intelligence or making threats. We really want this to be a productive conversation to explain to them why these bills should not pass or should be amended. So thinking about what your ask is, it's important to reflect on what you know about your legislator and then decide what you want to communicate. So is there something that you want them to know, to learn about, or something to think about? And then again, remember that when you're speaking, you might only get a couple of sentences or you might get a deeper conversation. One is it a public event? Or two, are they having other people come into the meeting, and how long is that meeting? So there are different kinds of things that you can ask for. You can ask to please consider my concerns when voting on any bill regarding mandating vaccines, and consider me as a resource on the issue if you have any questions. You know, try to keep that communication where you can keep going with communication. You know, it might be saying when the bill comes to your desk to vote on, please consider what I've shared with you, or come back to me so I could talk to you about the amendments or the bill text and why they're concerned. You can ask them to please abstain on any bill issuing a vaccine mandate. They won't vote no against their colleagues or the party line. So we found that it's more effective to ask them to abstain, which is to not vote, which also counts as a no, but then they're not letting down their friends at the Capitol or their party. You can ask them to please allow long-term studies to be completed before considering the mandate. You know, by sharing your personal story about, you know, it could be somebody that you know who's had a vaccine injury, or explaining that the various information is signed under penalty of perjury, and look at the data and it's a red flag, and please allow the studies to continue before we even think about passing a bill for a mandate. Or it could be a question to please consider authoring a bill as an alternative, or adding an amendment like a religious and conscientious beliefs exemption to any required vaccine. So really thinking about what you want to communicate and what you want to ask. So ways per can help, and all of our organizations also sign up to receive our newsletters. We'll be creating infographics that you can present to your representatives. I'm more than happy to set up consultations. That's what our organization does. If you are planning to go to any event, whether it be a parade or a hike or a coffee talk, or you have a meeting scheduled, give us a call and we can help you strategize, format your talking points. We can get those infographics to you. You can let us know, we've found this information out about our legislator. Are there any talking points that are geared towards that? And then also post-meeting deconstruction. Share with all of us your experience so that we can add it to our database. We have notes on previous voting history, how they've responded to issues regarding our bills. And then we can fine tune what the talking points are. And then that can help us further the movement so that as the lobbyists go in or as more advocates have conversations, we can consider your experiences as we create new talking points. So here is our information if you wanted to sign up for our newsletters, or again, if you want to set up a consultation to prepare for meeting with your legislator, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you for your time. Thank you for taking action. Thank you for wanting to stand up, and thank you for caring enough to be at this meeting tonight.
Thank you, Darlene. That was really awesome, and it kind of gave me some flashbacks to our days at the Capitol. So perks calls to action are to learn about your legislator, inquire about events to attend, develop relationships with your legislators and their staff, schedule a meeting to discuss your one-pager if you can, establish relatability, communicate in their language from where they are at and understanding the issues. Let us know how things go so we can work with and have better knowledge about each legislator as we advocate. So we have shared a ton of information so far. I wanted to share like a little story of mine just as a brain break. I know that we've been overloading you guys with a lot of great information, but Darlene's presentation, I feel like, really reminded me of my experience starting to lobby and starting to meet with legislators. And during SB 276, it was really intense. And I remember there was a group meeting, and I can't remember what city Nazarian's office is in, but it was like a 3-hour drive from Orange County. It was not a fun drive. I was like hormonal at the time. I had already been going through all these other meetings. And I remember showing up to that meeting, there were a ton of people there. And I had a bad experience in the sense that I was just so emotional, And so at one point in this meeting, he was texting, and he's in a room full of mothers who are sharing their vaccine injuries. And I remember he was looking down at his phone and texting, and I just took such offense to that I called him out during this. And this was me growing as a person, but also just growing in my experience. And I called him out, and he immediately was just like, I'm taking time out of my day to meet with you guys. It's late at night. I'm texting my wife. And of course, I immediately felt like, oh, gosh, I'm such an idiot. And so I remember that experience being very influential in my just growth as an advocate, because even with me being super rude to him, he actually spent a minute or two after that meeting, and he just said, look, I know that you're really passionate about this. I see that, that you guys are going through a hard time. I am going to look into all this information that you guys have provided me. I'm going to listen to you guys. And that's why I had this meeting tonight. And he's a Democrat, and he did actually end up helping us out a little bit during 276, in the sense that people had been meeting with him so often, and we had been submitting our questions and our concerns, that he did actually end up asking questions that we posed to him on the floor. And I thought that was so telling, one, of his own character, but also the impact of us meeting with our legislators and making the effort to go out of our own ways to meet with them, build a relationship with them, try to connect with them, and just, build a bridge there. And even though it might seem really mundane sometimes, and it might seem like it's not worth the effort, it can make a big difference, and it can be very, very impactful. So PERC has put together this incredible presentation. Great job, Darlene. There's a lot of information here, but they're all great tips because they've actually helped me a lot in my ability to speak to legislators and really be able to present my ideas and my concerns and my key points to them eloquently and confidently. So if you did want to connect with them, I'll just show their page one more time. You can do that. And I hope my little story gave you guys a little bit of a brain break. Maybe some of you guys went to go get water or take a bathroom break. The next thing that we are going to move on to is the impact that can happen at the school board and board of supervisors level. And I'm really excited to introduce Christy. She is with Educate Advocate, and she is the organization that I go to whenever we have families who are needing help, who have special needs or need help figuring out their IEPs, getting an advocate to get the things that they want on their IEP. And she also was a former school board member, so she knows the ins and outs of how these things work. So to present on impacting school boards and board of supervisors is Christy from Educate Advocate.
Good evening. I am Christy Sepulveda-Burchett. I am the Executive Director of Educate Advocate, and we serve families who have children with disabilities and special needs. I'm also a member of Stand Up California. We have a chapter in my county in San Bernardino, and as Allison pointed out, I'm a former board trustee. There's been a lot of work done in the past few months all across the state of California. Parents have been attending school board meetings and requesting their school board communicate with both the governor and the legislature that they do not want a COVID vaccine mandate in their school district. Senator Pan has introduced SB 871 that both removes the personal belief exemption, including religious belief exemptions, and adds the COVID-19 vaccine to the list of required vaccines for both public and private school attendance. Now, what should you do? So this presentation's changed when Senator Pan presented his SB 871. So now that we've shifted gears, what is the recommendation is that you request that your school board and or superintendent write a letter or resolution to Senator Pan and all co-authors asking them to withdraw and or oppose SB 871. One of the call to action is going to be immediately to send an email request to all your school board members as well as your superintendent with your request for them to add a letter or resolution to their next agenda. Your superintendent can actually immediately send a letter, and he or she does not have to wait for a board meeting to do this. We have a letter template for you provided at that link. And as it has been pointed out, you will all get a copy of the content here. So not to worry that you have to frantically write this down. You can attend a school board meeting and ask the board during public comment to write a letter or resolution addressing the points described next, as well as in the letter at the link above. You want to bring a lot of supporters with you to the meetings and get as many as you can in your district to write these requests as well. School boards and or superintendent should also send letters or resolutions to local legislators in their community, county offices of education, and county board of supervisors. In order that this letter or resolution is included in the legislative bill analysis, it is imperative that it is submitted to the legislative portal. And there's a link here to where that portal is. Ask your school board members and or superintendent to meet with local legislators on the issue if they are supportive of your position. If your school board and or superintendent has already passed such a resolution or letter opposing the COVID vaccine mandates, they are highly likely to do the same for SB 871. And Ontario Montclair School District has a resolution on their agenda for February 3rd, and we have a link there for the resolution that they have on their agenda on this very item. So these are the points that are important to address about why a school board or a superintendent should oppose SB 871. Everything here is already outlined in the letter that's going to the school board, with the exception of the last two lines. But I'll briefly go over these things. SB 871 takes away the personal belief, which includes religious beliefs, exemptions for the COVID vaccine, as well as all future vaccines. It begins for children in the age range of daycare and preschool. The COVID vaccine is under emergency use authorization for several of the age groups. It does not take into account natural immunity. The COVID vaccine does not stop anyone from getting or transmitting COVID. School districts, and this is why this is important, will lose ADA, or average daily attendance, as parents will pull their students out of the district for a mandate such as this. When LAUSD tried to enforce the COVID vaccine mandate for students without allowing for exemptions, they had a surplus of 34,000 students that chose not to get the COVID vaccine, and therefore would have to enroll in the City of Angels, a virtual independent type school. This was beyond their capacity to maintain, as they did not have the staff nor the infrastructure to support that many students. LAUSD backed off and delayed the COVID vaccine mandate implementation. This would likely happen to school districts statewide. Several school districts have surveyed their families and overwhelmingly found that parents do not support a COVID vaccine mandate. You want to see Brea Olinda Unified School District, as well as Chaffee Joint Union High School District. You want to reference school boards that have passed such resolutions or written letters, and you can include other bills in this request, your letter request. However, keep in mind that SB 871 specifically impacts the school district's budget, and therefore this bill, the school districts and school boards would be most likely to oppose.
Hold on a second, guys. I see what I did here. See how I jumped to the bottom here? Sorry. Okay, we are, there we go.
Yes. So school board resources. On our website, we have the various resolutions and or letters that have been written by school boards across the state. These resolutions were making a statement to Governor Newsom asking him either to rescind the COVID vaccine mandate or to change it to a recommendation. If and when your school board and or superintendent will put forward a resolution and or letter opposing SB 871 and any other similar bills, please send us an email and let us know so we can add these to our website as well. And this is another one of our call to actions that I'll reference at the end. This is a summary for the school boards. We need to get a number of school boards and or superintendents to either write letters or resolutions that they are in opposition to SB 871. So we can show this to the legislators around the state as well as the governor. Again, it's imperative that these letters and or resolutions are uploaded to the legislative portal, and the website is there. So next, we're going on to the Board of Supervisors and local public health. The Board of Supervisors oversees the local public health director and officer. These persons make local public health orders regarding COVID. Local public health is also communicating with our school districts about the implementation of COVID mandates, and they have been throughout the state of emergency. The Board of Supervisors also has purview over the local COVID emergency in your county. This is another reason it is important to get your Board of Supervisors to write a letter or resolution opposing SB 871. This signals to local public health and the California Department of Public Health that the county does not want this. With our Board of Supervisors, we want to again request that your Board of Supervisors write a letter or resolution to Senator Pan and all co-authors asking them to withdraw and or oppose SB 871. Immediately send an email request to your Board of Supervisors with your request for them to add a letter or resolution to their next agenda. Again, a letter template is provided here at this website. The Board of Supervisors should also send letters, resolutions to local legislators, county offices of education, and local school districts. In order that this letter or resolution is included in the legislative bill analysis, it is imperative again that it is submitted to the legislative portal, and this can be found at that website. If your Board of Supervisors members are supportive of your position, you can ask that they also meet with local legislators on the issue. You can attend Board of Supervisors meetings and ask the board during public comment to write a letter or resolution addressing the points described. If your Board of Supervisors has already passed such a resolution or sent a letter opposing COVID vaccine mandates, again, they are highly likely to do this as well. And these are where to follow us on social media as well as our website. And the calls to action here, it's reiterating the 3 that we went over. These are all important. Send an email request to all your school board members as well as superintendent for them to add a letter or resolution to their next agenda. And there's the website that has a letter template already for you. Send an email request to your Board of Supervisors in your county for them to add a letter or resolution to their next agenda. And again, the letter template is there. And then if either one of these put forward a resolution or letter opposing SB 871 or any other similar bills, please send us an email and let us know so we can add it to our website. Thank you so much.
Good job, Christy. Thank you so much. I was going to go over this calls to action part, but then you went ahead and did it. So there you go, guys. So I see a few comments here and I want to address them. You know, the legislative season is 9 months long. And so a lot of what we did in this presentation is we put together some more even keel methods for the beginning of the legislative session, right? We are going to be going hard on opposing these bills because they just recently were introduced. And when I say that the legislative session is 9 months long, I say that for you guys to mentally prepare that you're going to be doing this for 9 months, you know? And so having gone through a few legislative seasons now, what I learned from SB 276 as an organization that started during that time was we got burned out by like May, you know, because we were fighting so dang hard. We were angry, we were pissed off, we were yelling and screaming and trying to get our representatives to listen and hear us. But the reality is we have some time. Now, I'm not saying that we don't put a lot of pressure on them and we don't show up and really make them know that this is how we feel about these bills, but we do need to pace ourselves. There is going to come a time where that pressure is going to be felt and we will have that moment to be able to do that. But these are some effective ways for us to move the needle. And it's important for us to do that in the beginning, because if we're laying some of the groundwork now and we're showing them that we are educated, we're well-spoken, we know our facts, we know what we're talking about, and we have very valid concerns regarding these mandates, there's not a lot of arguments that they can have against us. And so, again, the legislative season is 9 months. You don't want to go super, super hard all 9 months because you will literally go crazy. And so it's really important that we are pacing ourselves and kind of reserving some of that energy because we need it. We're going to need it. So I hope that is, you know, encouragement for anybody who's feeling like, well, I just want to fight and I'm so angry right now and I just want to get things done now. We are going to get things done. And these are some really important ways that we can do that immediately and make an impact immediately. This is the strategic part of that. And then there's a place in this movement for all of the other strategies as well, but this is just one part of it. And one thing that I really love and appreciate about all of the organizations who've come together to put this on is that we've all done a little bit of all of it. And so we're sharing some of the most important things that we think are the most helpful for the beginning of the legislative session.
So we are talking about bringing back exemptions. The Voice for Choice Advocacy, California Health Coalition, and Educate Advocate have done a lot of work on this. We can't repeal SB 277. Repealing SB 277 would basically put us back to what the statute is in 2014. That's what repealing means. We can't do that because the personal belief exemption has been taken away, and it would be incredibly hard to put that personal belief exemption back for all the vaccines that are required for school. And so the plan has been, both for CHCA and a Voice for Choice Advocacy and Educate Advocate, is to get a religious and conscientious belief exemption put into the statute, put into law for those vaccines. That is something that most other states have. Most other states have either a personal belief exemption or a religious exemption, and one state has a conscientious belief exemption. We've never had a religious belief exemption written into the law in California. As Valerie mentioned, in 2015, Governor Brown did in his signing statement say that he wanted to see a religious exemption. Pre SB 277, you had to go get your personal belief exemption signed by a doctor. You didn't have to do that if you were part of a religion that prohibited seeking any medical advice or treatment from a healthcare practitioner. That was extreme. You know, most of us who have religious beliefs, we may have religious beliefs against some medical treatment, but having religious beliefs against all medical treatment is unlikely. Adults are able to utilize a religious exemption for employer-mandated vaccines due to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, but this protection is not currently extended to children who attend public and private schools in California. And so that is something that we are looking to do. And we're looking to do it by pointing that out. We're pointing it out that there is inequity between adults and children. We are looking at the religious exemption and a conscientious belief exemption specifically for the COVID vaccine and or the HPV vaccine bill. Those two bills, one has been introduced, one we are expecting to be introduced in the next week or so, and that we want a religious and conscientious belief exemption for either or both of those bills to be added in. So why do religious rights matter to medical freedom? Some people may be saying, you know, like, why do we care about religious rights? We should have personal rights. We agree, as I said, we don't think we can get that back in California. We have to chip away at it. The freedom of religion is a fundamental right of paramount importance, expressly protected by federal law. And religious liberty is enshrined in the text of our California Constitution and numerous federal statutes. So it is something that has been brought to courts and all the way up to the Supreme Court and upheld. So it is a place that we feel that we have some way of bringing it forward and having some value to it, and the ability to get a religious and conscious belief exemption.
So we need a groundswell of support for a religious and conscientious belief exemption in order to have an impact on policymakers. So we started this campaign. It's a campaign to gather a list of support for a religious and conscientious belief statement. And it's going to focus on reaching out to religious leaders, faith-based organizations, school representatives, and individuals, but we need your help. Here's the ways that you can help us with this project. Reach out to those that you know that are religious leaders, organizations, and just the schools in your neighborhood. And point them to our website, religiousrightscoalition.org, where they have a place where they can sign on to our sign-on statement, which Christy's going to share with you in just a minute. Share our website with friends and family. Again, it's religiousrightscoalition.org. You can also volunteer for us if you want to help us to gather signatures. Email us at info@religiousrightscoalition.org to volunteer. And finally, you as an individual can also go on our website to sign on in support.
The sign-on statement is Article 1 of the California Constitution recognizes every person's right to the free exercise and enjoyment of religion without discrimination or preference, describing this right as liberty of conscience. I support the rights of families or individuals to make health decisions without coercion, discrimination, or segregation based on religious and conscientious beliefs. This includes the existence of religious and conscientious belief exemptions from required vaccines, with those exempted retaining the ability to fully access, without onerous restrictions, in-person employment, education, public resources, and any other function of society. Again, please refer to our website, religiousrightscoalition.org.
So uniting forces and supporting efforts. So we have spent a lot of time putting together this presentation, but we also have a coalition of over 15 organizations who are working together. And so there are going to be more of these. We do want to have more workshops so we are able to give crash courses on some of these areas. And the next slide, I think, is going to be just a summary of some of the things that we discussed today.
So strategy of summary for the 2022 legislative session. This is just a summary of the efforts that we are doing as a group, or we are educating constituents and organizations on the legislative process, the need for lobbyists at the Capitol, and taking action based on the order of impact. We are looking for constituents to meet with legislators in the district. We are getting school districts and board supervisors to oppose the bad bills. And we are looking to create a groundswell of support for religious and conscientious belief exemption. And then I wanted to go through what types of organizations there are and what they are able to do. So in California, we have 501c3s, 501c4s, and PACs. 501c3s provide education and information and resources to the public. Their donations are tax deductible, and you can give to other, so 501c3s can give to other 501c3 nonprofits, but they cannot give to individual political campaigns. 501c4s can use their funding to hire lobbyists and participate in lobbying efforts. Their donations are not tax deductible, so if you donate to them, you can't deduct them from your taxes. And 501c4s also cannot give to individual political campaigns. A PAC, which is a political action campaign, can collect contributions and donate those funds to campaigns for or against candidates, ballot initiatives, or legislation. Their donations are also not tax deductible, and they can also use their money to specifically create advertising, marketing materials for or against candidates, ballot initiatives, or legislation outside of what they are doing, donating directly to those pieces. And I'm going to hand it over to Allison.
Me, guys. Yeah. So resources for orgs and individuals. Know who does what. A Voice for Choice has both a 501c3 and a 501c4. They have expertise on legislation. They do regular webinars, blog, social media, and emails on mandates and exemptions. They also host events, speak at rallies, and to the media. CHCA is also a 501c4. So again, A Voice for Choice and CHCA both have 501c4s. That means that they do have the ability to have a lobbyist and do currently have lobbyists at the Capitol. So CHCA has a Voice of Health Freedom at the Capitol. They also do weekly emails with latest legislative news and CTAs, and projects that they are working on are the religious exemption rights, college immunization policies. California Freedom Keepers is a chapter of Freedom Keepers United, which is a 501c3. We do education through marketing campaigns, social media. We also host community events, workshops, and we provide national support for other organizations throughout the nation. And we have a robust volunteer program to help individuals get involved. So if there are things that you want to jump into right away, we have the ability to send you off with some tasks and help all of our organizations with some volunteer work. Educate Advocate is also a 501c3. They help special needs families on educational issues. They have advocates at the Capitol on issues related to special needs. And they also provide information on outreach to school boards and board of supervisors. PERC is also a 501c3. They do consultation and infographics for legislative meetings. They do weekly newsletters, updates, CTAs, town halls, and legal updates. They are also doing a lot of litigation and grassroots advocacy. So uniting organizations and alliances. I'm just going to read off of this. We, like I said a little bit earlier, we have been made up of over 15 medical freedom organizations throughout the state of California, and we continue to grow. So this would be Convention on Health Rights. That's my bad. Many of these organizations have been fighting medical mandates since 2015, with some advocates who've been fighting decades longer. Convention on Health Rights is significant because each organization who has participated brings a unique dynamic in diverse areas of experience that allows for collaboration, unification, and trust among organizations. Together, we are more powerful than we are alone, and the work of fighting against medical mandates must be done together. So Take Action Town Halls, this is something that our organization has worked really hard to provide to our national chapters as well. So what a Take Action Town Hall is actually, let me move to the next slide here and share about my organization, and then I'll get into Take Action Town Halls. So California Freedom Keepers, we are a chapter of Freedom Keepers United. Freedom Keepers United is a national organization, and our mission is to preserve medical freedom. So we do that through service, education, community. We provide valuable resources and support, as well as sustainable solutions, empowering individuals affected by medical mandates across the world to make informed decisions and take back their medical freedom. So what is the Take Action Town Hall? So in 2019, during SB 276, I don't know how many of you are local to Orange County, but if you are, we hosted an event called Use Your Voice event. This is now being turned into Take Action Town Halls. During this event, we spent about an hour on presentations, and we shared and really got the crowd riled up and excited to take action. And then we spent the 2+ hours after those presentations gathering constituents into their immediate district groups. So that time was really used to ask questions, work together on how to connect and communicate with the representatives. And the constituents who came and were able to get together in the groups, they spent that time strategizing on talking points, what calls to action there should be for their district. And they were also invited into like a group communications platform. So at the time it was Group Me. This time it's going to be sponsored by Public Square. And it's going to be almost like it'll be like a group chat. So you'll be able to stay engaged and stay in touch with other constituents and be able to continue strategizing and updating each other on what's happening in your district or with your representative. So Take Action Town Halls have been really effective in engaging the public to take action, but to do it in unison. A lot of time there are so many different groups and so many advocates kind of going rogue and doing their own thing. And what's really nice about having collaboration with other organizations and other advocates is you're going in with either same or different points of the same messaging, and you're really strategizing together how you're going to get your points across to your representatives. And this has been really effective because, when you meet together with other constituents in your group, you can schedule out, I'm going to go meet with my representative at this date on this time. If I get a meeting, I'll let you guys all know and I'll invite you. Or, hey, I just want to do this meeting with one other person. And then you've got like a calendar and a schedule, and you've got notes on your representative, and you've built a relationship with their staff, but it's not just you, it's your whole group. So it's been really effective at really building those relationships with them and also having an in to the legislature of what is happening in district. The point of these is to educate, organize, and activate. So a collaborative effort of local organizations come together to educate the community on specific topics that are relative to the legislative season. So kind of like what we just did tonight. This is something that we're doing all across the nation, where we've got local state organizations joining together to provide information to the community. This allows for unified messaging as well as consistent and accurate information among groups. For example, I've learned so much just working on this presentation with all of the organizations here. There were things that I didn't know, or maybe I was misinformed about, and that I learned, and I wouldn't have been able to do that without the experience of other organizations. And then the second thing is organizing. So by gathering constituents within the same assembly or Senate districts and giving them a chance to strategize together, it really ensures plans and strategies are given an action plan. And that helps to see that the tasks are actually carried through with. And then the last thing is activating. Constituents become activated and motivated to take action in their local communities by being provided resources, support, and a group of local constituents to work with together. This was like my favorite part of seeing the original Use Your Voice event happen, and then now getting ready to host a bunch more of these Take Action Town Halls. You got to see people become lifelong friends. For example, Darlene and I from PERC, we did a bunch of meetings together, and a lot of that had to do with making sure that we had connected with other people that were the same constituents or in the same constituency. And that really made an impact because we were able to compare notes, and we were able to compare notes of the representative, talk about the special interests that our representative had. really strategize on, what our key points were going to be when a bill hit a specific committee, how we were going to utilize that with the representatives. It also allowed us to communicate about any previous experiences we've had with either the representative themselves or their staff. We've had a lot of great relationships come out of just continuously showing up, continuously having meetings with them, but also being able to say, oh yeah, my friend Darlene or my friend Ashley, they just spoke with you about this the other day. And if that person has a good, strong relationship with them, their opinion of you, it helps to have kind of like that backup, right? So the point is to work to strengthen and complement and add to each other's talking points when we're at these town halls, these take action town halls. But you're also getting to know your allies in your local area who are advocating. And that's a big part of what we do at Freedom Keepers United, is we really want to connect people and be in community with people. Because sometimes this can feel really alone. You can feel really alone in this movement, or not in this movement. Maybe you're not really in this, and you've never had to advocate for things like this before, which makes showing up to things or having a meeting or going to a rally or going to an event that a legislator is holding, it makes those things really scary. So having a Take Action Town Hall really helps with that, because you are getting a chance to meet with like-minded people who are fighting the same things as you. So we have Take Action Town Halls that are coming to a town near you. You can register at bit.ly/takeactiontownhall. So this is actually the incorrect slide. And I believe the right one is right here. So this is the link here. bit.ly/takeactiontownhall. So we have a couple that are already planned. There will be one in San Diego, one in Orange County, and one in Ventura. We have sites on San Bernardino as well, and the IE, and we're hoping to add more. If you do not see if you see that you have a wait list next to the ticket name for your region, that just means that we don't have one planned yet. But the hope is that we'll have enough interest from that registration link that we'll be able to host one in that area. Now, if you are itching to just get active and be in the mix of things, and you've got a lot of anxiety, or you've got a lot of energy, or you're just so angry and you need to put that energy somewhere, we have plenty of work for you to do if you have the time. You can volunteer with us and help us and other organizations at bit.ly/California CAFK volunteer. So it's bit.ly/CAFK volunteer. That's a really great place to kind of get involved volunteer-wise, because we actually have projects from multiple organizations in there, and we're all kind of collaborating on things. Right now, we have tasks specifically on the bills, SB 866, SB 871, and we've got people researching, coming up with key points and one-pagers and marketing graphics and things like that, writing opposition letters, creating content that is really going to educate the public, but also help sway public opinion, which is a big focus of ours. And lastly, if you would like to stay up to date on what any of us are doing, California Freedom Keepers has a new texting system. You can text CAFK to 313131. And we're going to be doing our best to give you guys updates on what all of these organizations here tonight are doing, as well as what's happening at the California Capitol. And lastly, if you wanted to keep up with our organization or with our chapter, you can find us on Instagram at California_freedom_keepers, or you can visit our website at freedomkeepersunited.org. And then you can also find more resources, events, and calls to action at our campsite bio, and that would be cafk.campsite.bio. And that is it, guys. I do want to say, because I can't remember if I did say this or not when I was sharing about unifying organizations, it is really cool that even had something to say about each of the organizations here tonight. Because I remember during SB 276, and I'm sure during SB 277, there wasn't a lot of unification, and it was really hard to get organizations to work together. And what I really appreciate about Convention on Health Rights is that it is multiple organizations throughout the state, not just the 5 that you heard from tonight, but we are meeting regularly. We're actually meeting twice a week, and we're discussing, key updates from that week, any changes to the bills. We're discussing strategy. We're talking about experiences that we've had prior to this that may inform our decisions on these bills today. And so there's been a lot of value to the work that these organizations are doing, but also the value to being able to unify as organizations working together to fight these mandates. So I hope tonight that you guys appreciated and got something out of what we shared tonight. It was a labor of love and passion. So thank you guys for being here. I appreciate you guys spending 2 hours of your Thursday night with us. I hope that this information was helpful, and we may be doing some of these again. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you so much, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.